My name is Jordan, and I've always had a thing for older men, composed, confident, the type who've lived enough to know what they want. But nothing in my 20 years of life prepared me for Marcus, my father's oldest friend. I first saw him the summer I moved back home from college temporarily. My father, Dean, had organized a small welcome-back barbecue, a testosterone-fueled gathering of middle-aged men who still dressed like they were 30, with too much cologne and not enough restraint. Among them was Marcus. He was striking. Tall, broad shoulders, flecks of gray in his beard. He wore his years like they were badges of honor. Dark brown skin, salt and pepper hair slicked back effortlessly. He looked expensive, the kind of man who didn't just walk into a room, he claimed it. His laugh was low, magnetic. He moved slowly, deliberately, like he knew he was being watched. And somehow, he always seemed to know exactly who was watching. When my father introduced us, Marcus's handshake lingered. His palm was warm and his eyes, a sharp, unreadable hazel, locked onto mine. "So, this is Jordan," he said with a smile that tugged at something primal in me. "Dean didn't tell me you grew up." I raised an eyebrow. "I guess that makes two of us." His grin widened. That evening, I watched him from across the yard, pretending not to. He laughed easily with the other men, but every so often I'd catch his eyes flicking back to me, quick, appraising. There was a heat to it, unspoken but undeniable. I wasn't imagining it. I couldn't be. Later, I went inside to grab a drink. I didn't hear him follow, but when I closed the fridge, there he was, leaning casually against the counter. "Hot out there," he said, voice low. "Yeah. You'd think spring would be kinder." He stepped closer, reaching for a glass near me. Too close. His arm brushed mine, not enough to apologize for, but enough to notice. He didn't move away. "You remind me of someone I used to know," he said. "Is that your way of saying I look like an old flame?" He laughed. "Maybe." The silence between us tightened. His eyes dropped to my lips for a second too long before he finally stepped back. "Dean's lucky to have you home," he added. "You're not what I expected." "You're not either," I replied. He didn't answer, just smiled and walked out, leaving me standing there with my heart pounding like a war drum. That night, I lay in bed, restless. His voice echoed in my head. His smirk. The weight of his stare. The slow, deliberate way he moved around me. There was a line there, one I wasn't sure he'd crossed, but I knew I had already tiptoed toward it. And that terrified me. The next day, I found myself asking about him casually, under the guise of curiosity. My father lit up. "Marcus? He's been my best friend since college. One of the most loyal people I know. Great family, too. 2 kids, beautiful wife. Smart as hell. Runs his own consulting firm now." I nodded, filing each detail away like it mattered. Maybe it did. Over the next few weeks, Marcus came by more often, supposedly to catch up with my dad, but I noticed the pattern. He always came when he knew I'd be around. The backyard conversations turned into casual chats in the kitchen, and eventually into shared drinks on the porch after everyone else had gone to bed. He asked about my life, college, dating, ambition. He listened like no one else had. And I listened too. About his marriage, his regrets, the way life sometimes feels like a performance you can't exit. The man I saw was different than the one everyone else saw. One evening, after too many bourbons and one too many personal confessions, he looked at me and said, "You ever feel like you're waiting for your real life to begin?" I nodded. "All the time." His gaze held mine for a beat too long. "Maybe it already has," he said softly. Something changed that night. He didn't touch me. He didn't have to. There was a tension between us now, charged and undeniable. A thread pulled tight, ready to snap. The next morning, I avoided him. I couldn't explain what we were becoming, but I knew what it wasn't. It wasn't innocent. It wasn't friendship. It was a question that hung in the air between us every time we looked at each other. Would we? Should we? Could we? One night, as he left after another too long visit, he paused by the door, looked back at me, and said, "You're dangerous, Jordan." I swallowed hard. "Then stop coming back." He smiled, a sad, knowing kind of smile, and closed the door behind him. But he didn't stop coming back. Marcus started texting me the next day. At first, it was innocuous. "Good seeing you, Jordan." Then, "You always this sharp?" By the end of the week, "You've been on my mind more than I care to admit." I should have stopped it. Should have blocked the number, said something, anything. But I didn't. I replied. I played along. And soon, we weren't texting anymore, we were talking. Late into the night, voices low, as if afraid someone might hear the weight of what we weren't saying. He started finding reasons to see me. A quick stop to return tools to my father. An invite to help with some business paperwork. A casual offer for lunch. No one questioned it. Marcus had always been part of the family tapestry. He was my father's best friend. His presence was routine, unthreatening. No one suspected that, under the surface, we were both coming undone. One afternoon, we ended up in his car after he picked me up, on the way, to a store my dad needed something from. It was an excuse. We both knew it. He pulled into a quiet park, engine idling. Silence stretched between us like a second skin. "Jordan," he said, turning slightly in the seat, "I haven't wanted something this badly in years." I didn't pretend to be confused. "Then why don't you take it?" He looked at me, really looked. "Because if I cross that line, there's no going back." I nodded. "Maybe that's the point." He didn't kiss me. He didn't touch me. But in that moment, every inch of my skin felt like it was waiting to be claimed. He inhaled sharply and turned away, gripping the steering wheel. "You're dangerous," he whispered again. "And I'm already too far in." The weeks that followed were an exercise in restraint. We found comfort in emotional intimacy, a kind that bordered on erotic, even when we didn't touch. He told me things he hadn't told anyone. About his marriage. About how lonely a bed can feel when someone's lying next to you but miles away. About the shame that came with wanting something forbidden and alive. Something like me. I wasn't passive in it either. I flirted. I teased. I showed up in tighter clothes when I knew he'd be around. I let my fingers brush his. I met his gaze and held it, daring him. We were caught in a slow, exquisite burn. Neither of us wanted to be the first to surrender. But surrender has a way of happening quietly, slipping into your bloodstream until it owns you. One evening, after my father had gone to sleep, Marcus lingered behind. We sat on the porch in silence, sipping from the same bottle of bourbon, passing it back and forth like a shared secret. "You ever think about what would happen if someone found out?" I asked. "All the time," he said. "I'd lose everything. My family. Dean. You. You never had me," I said, meeting his eyes. "Not yet." That broke something in him. He stood suddenly. I should go. I followed him to the door. Neither of us spoke, but the silence buzzed. He turned to say goodbye, but before he could speak, I leaned in, close enough to feel the warmth of his breath. I didn't kiss him. I let him make that choice. And he did. His lips met mine in a sharp, desperate kiss that stole the breath from both our lungs. It was hungry, unpracticed, almost clumsy in its need. His hands found my waist, then my face, then my hair, grasping like he didn't know which part of me he wanted most. We pulled away too fast. He stared at me, stunned by his own betrayal. "I can't," he whispered. "But you already did," I said. He left without another word, his footsteps heavy with guilt. I watched him go, my heart hammering in my chest. I wasn't sure if I wanted him to turn back or disappear forever. Maybe both. That night I didn't sleep. I replayed the kiss until my lips tingled from the memory of his. I knew we'd crossed the line now. We couldn't pretend anymore. We weren't dancing around temptation, we were in bed with it, whether our clothes had come off or not. The next day, he didn't text. Or call. Not the next day either. By the third, I was pacing my room, furious at the silence. Had he run back to his wife, wrapped in her forgiveness, pretending I was a phase he'd regret? Was I just a youthful slip in an otherwise stable life? When I finally saw him again, at our house no less, he looked like hell. Tired. Uneasy. His smile for my father was fake, stretched too tight. When he saw me, his face faltered, just for a second. Later, when no one was watching, he slipped a note into my hand as he passed me in the hallway. Just 6 words. Meet me. Tonight. Same place. My fingers trembled around the paper. I tucked it into my pocket and said nothing. But inside, something dangerous was waking up. The note burned in my pocket all day like a secret I couldn't stop touching. Meet me. Tonight. Same place. No time. No explanation. Just a pull I couldn't resist. By midnight, I was walking toward his car, parked under the usual tree at the edge of that quiet park. His headlights were off, but the engine was still warm. The window rolled down, and Marcus looked up at me, his face shadowed and unreadable. You came, he said softly. I always do, I answered, slipping into the passenger seat. We didn't speak for a moment. The air inside the car was thick with everything we hadn't said since the kiss. I watched his hands on the steering wheel, strong, tense, twitching like they were trying not to reach for me. You shouldn't be here, he finally said. Then why did you ask me? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned his head back and exhaled. Because I can't stop thinking about you, Jordan. And it's fucking up everything. I'm not sorry. I know. That's what scares me. The silence turned dangerous. He turned to look at me again, and in that stare there was no more pretending. No more caution or control. He was already unraveling, and I could feel it, the trembling edge of a man who'd resisted too long and wanted too much. I'm not here to be a mistake, I said, my voice low. If you think that's what this is, say it now. His eyes flashed. You're not a mistake. You're the first real thing I've felt in years. That was all I needed. I leaned in, and this time, he didn't hesitate. His mouth crashed into mine like a dam breaking. There was no gentleness, no restraint. Only hunger. He pulled me across the console, his hands exploring my back, my hair, my neck, like he was memorizing me. We didn't care about space, about noise, about being caught. In that moment, nothing else existed. The windows fogged as our bodies collided, hands desperate and mouths reckless. My shirt came off. His followed. Our breath filled the small space like storm winds. He whispered my name like a prayer, like an apology. Jordan, what are we doing? Whatever we want, I breathed. Whatever you've been too afraid to want. And he wanted. God, he wanted. It showed in the way he touched me. Rough, trembling, reverent. His fingers dug into my thighs, his lips trailing down my neck, his voice breaking with every moan. He was losing himself in me, and I let him. But even in the heat there was something tender, a reverence in the way he held me after, like I was made of glass and gilt. His heart thundered beneath my ear as I rested against his chest, both of us breathless and undone. Neither of us spoke for a long while. Eventually, he pulled away, staring out the windshield at nothing. I just cheated on my wife, he said, like he'd only now realized it. I looked at him, unapologetic. You cheated the moment you kissed me. Tonight was just honest. He winced but didn't argue. I should feel worse, he muttered. But all I feel is you. I sat up, pulling my shirt back over my skin. So what now? I don't know, he said. But this, he gestured between us, this doesn't disappear just because it's inconvenient. I nodded, then leaned close to whisper, then don't let it. He drove me home in silence. No music. No words. Just the rhythm of our hearts and the gravity of what we'd done filling the space between us. Before I stepped out, he reached for my hand. You've changed everything, Jordan. I was just being myself. Maybe that's the problem. He smiled faintly. No. That's what makes it impossible to let go. He didn't kiss me goodbye. He just watched me walk to the door, his eyes lingering like they could still feel me. I slipped inside quietly, past my father's room, my chest still heaving with adrenaline and guilt that hadn't taken root yet. I didn't feel bad. I didn't feel ashamed. I felt wanted. But I also knew something had shifted irreversibly. There was no turning back. Whatever game we were playing had now become real. We'd stepped into the fire, and part of me didn't care if it burned us both alive. Lying in bed, I replayed it all. The taste of his skin, the way he whispered my name, the ache in his voice when he said I'd changed him. Outside, the wind howled, as if it already knew what was coming. Marcus stopped texting. Not right away, not completely. But the rhythm changed. Where there were once midnight calls and reckless declarations, now came silence and guarded replies. One-word answers. Delayed responses. The weight of reality was closing in. We had crossed the line, and now we were stranded on the other side. For a few days, I convinced myself he needed space. He had a wife, kids, a life built on the illusion of control. I was the chaos he welcomed and feared in equal measure. But as the distance grew, so did the knot in my chest. I saw him again at the house the following weekend. He walked in with practiced ease, like nothing had happened, like he hadn't kissed me breathless in the dark or buried his face in my neck while whispering my name like it was holy. I watched him hug my father, laugh at a joke, sip beer like it wasn't bitter with guilt. When we were alone, in the hallway between the kitchen and the bathroom, he finally spoke. "We can't keep doing this," he said, not meeting my eyes. I leaned against the wall, arms folded. "You don't get to ghost me and then call it noble." He flinched. "You think this is easy for me?" "No," I said. "I think it was easy the night you took my clothes off. I think it was real then. Everything after? That's where the lies start." He stepped closer, jaw clenched. "I've got people depending on me." "So lie to them," I snapped. "Don't lie to me." Silence. "I can't lose your father," he finally said, and the honesty in that sentence sliced deeper than any denial. So that was it. Not the marriage. Not the kids. My father. He wasn't afraid of being caught. He was afraid of being caught by him. I nodded slowly. "Then I guess you made your choice." "Jordan." "No," I cut him off. "You don't get to say my name like it still means something." He left without another word. And that was the first time I let myself cry over him. The fallout wasn't immediate. It came in small waves. Awkward silences, cancelled plans, his absence from our usual barbecues and late-night poker games. My dad asked once if I'd said something to offend Marcus. I just shrugged. But tension doesn't stay hidden for long. One afternoon, my father came home early from work, his face pale and set. He sat across from me at the kitchen table with a stillness that made my skin crawl. "I need to ask you something," he said. I froze. "Okay." He swallowed hard. "Did something happen between you and Marcus?" Everything in my body stopped. The question hung between us like a live wire, and I couldn't move without getting burned. "What are you talking about?" "I'm not accusing," he said quickly. "But you're different. And he's been avoiding me. Something's wrong." I looked at him. This man who raised me, who trusted Marcus like a brother, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't tell the truth. Not yet. So I lied. "No. Nothing happened." He studied me for a long time. I don't know if he believed me. I don't know if I even cared. That night, I found Marcus parked outside the gym where I worked. He hadn't texted. Just showed up. "Why are you here?" I asked. "I needed to see you." "You shouldn't be here," I said, throwing his own words back at him. He ran a hand down his face. "I messed up. I thought I could walk away, that if I buried it deep enough, it would fade. And it didn't," he whispered. "I miss you like a disease. Like something I can't cure." He reached out, fingers brushing mine. I didn't pull away. "I still think about that night," he said. "Every fucking day." "Then what are you doing about it?" He looked down. Nothing. Because I'm still a coward. I laughed bitterly. At least you know it now. He nodded, eyes filled with something like sorrow. If I were 10 years younger, if you weren't Dean's son. But I am, I interrupted. And you're still married. He swallowed hard. I don't want this to end. It already did, I said. You just haven't admitted it yet. We stood there in silence, the streetlights humming above us, casting halos over a moment that could have been something else, something beautiful if it hadn't been so broken. He leaned in, and for a moment I thought he'd kiss me. I think part of me wanted him to. But instead, he whispered, "I'm sorry," and turned back to his car. This time, I didn't watch him drive away. I just walked inside, past the sweat and mirrors, into the kind of quiet that follows when you finally accept what you cannot change. It's been weeks. We don't speak anymore. He hasn't been to the house. My dad hasn't asked again. Maybe he suspects. Maybe he just doesn't want the truth. Sometimes I still dream about Marcus, about his hands on me, his voice in the dark. But in the light, I remind myself, he was a man with too much to lose and too little courage to risk it. I was the fire. He chose the ashes.